Please listen carefully.
We're starting season 2 today? Oops, someone needs to tell me these things. No, that's a copyright strike, just waiting to happen. What if we just used last season's intro?
It seems a little lazy, don't you think?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Hello? I am the Ronin Pawn?
And I am Harvey, and that was a sound which I do not recognize because it's been 3 weeks. Oh, it was a cheer. Random Aim cheered 125 bits. Thank you very much. Hello to you too, Random Aim. Welcome back.
We're back!
To Harv and Pawn. We are back. It is time.
Excellent.
And it all begins
Indeed.
again. Thank you, Random Aim, for the cheer, and thank you, Bavilia, for the subscription. That's a 3-month streak, which is impressive because, you know, we took apparently 21 days off according to Streamlabs. It didn't feel like that. Felt like we were, you know, those 2 weeks, they just ran straight by, but we cut it off. We said, all right, there's the season 1 for you. Let's take the break since both of our shows fell on Christmas and New Year's Day.
Good times to have shows.
Mm-hmm. And so let's all like join together since we missed New Year's for the first beer of the new year. It is not my first beer of the new year, let me tell you.
I was going to say that I would be incredibly impressed if that was your first beer of the new year. Like, wow, you know, really good for you, Pawn. You're really making a change. Starting the new year off right.
Alcoholism, no. You are the Ronin Harv and the HOC Pawn. Hello, Rex Gates, and thank you for the cheer as well. Rex cheering 5 to say hello in chat. So, new year, new, you know, fucking, you know, all the fucking best things of the decade videos on YouTube. What have you been doing, Harv? You notice that? Like, it gets, you look at your, like, YouTube list, you're coming down the, you know, just what's coming down the subscription feed, and everybody and their cousin has, a best fill in the blank of the decade. Is this what happens on decades? I don't remember.
I
We
mean,
didn't really have
I'm incredibly unsurprised that that is the videos that everyone is making. But also, I have made a few New Year's resolutions, which aren't really New Year's resolutions. This one I was doing before the New Year even started, and it was to no longer look at the YouTube recommendation page. Got my
Hey,
bookmark set as my subscriptions, and I just never go off of that except if I'm really bored.
yeah. Yep,
So
that's me too. I do, when especially this time of year. I don't know, my subscriptions, generally or not, but basically everybody dried up. They did the same thing we did. They went away for 2 weeks. They're like, "Fuck it, it's the holidays." But there's been a couple of things, but it's been a very dry YouTube season so far in terms of just the new content didn't come out, and I ended up watching a lot of films on the HBO and the Amazon Prime and that sort of a thing to fill the gaps. I have now seen the entire Watchmen series on HBO, which I did in a single sitting, because, I have those kind of
that's
days
always the
where it's
best.
just a couch-locked kind of a day, which we'll be getting onto later if you've read the topic for discussion today. What else did I see? Okay, so get this, Harvey. I have now seen both the Detective Pikachu movie and Aquaman.
Oh, okay. So the Detective Pikachu movie, I don't remember the reviews for it. What did you think of it? Was it good? I haven't seen it, but
I thought it was good. I thought
yeah,
it was fun. It was good. It
I,
was
I feel like anything that Ryan Reynolds is in slash is voicing
I
is
did
remotely
not.
associated with is yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he was the voice either of Pikachu the entire time. It
Oh.
had to, at the end there's going to be like an appearance cameo kind of thing, and then I went, "Oh, no spoilers." But they hired him. They're gonna put him in front of the camera at some point. The money's going out. Um,
Yeah, got to use that beautiful face. I watched a film with Ryan Reynolds in it before we jump onto Aquaman. Uh, it was called Six Underground, and it was a Netflix original, I think, and it was pretty good. It was like, yeah, good, solid kind of comedy, kind of bit twisted action, horror, not horror, just comedy. It was good.
I have not heard of that. Netflix exclusive. I gave up my Netflix subscription a
Yeah.
while ago when I felt like I got to the bottom of all the really good original stuff that I was watching on there, and went over to Amazon Prime where they had more like TV and stuff, just stuff that I was, oh yeah, I'd watch that, I'd watch that, I'd watch that. Netflix has this problem, at least for me. It's been a few months now, but I left because it was just it's a huge dartboard that you're throwing at, a massive dartboard to see whether or not you're going to land on something that's great or shit. And without any reference to, they bring on so many new things and they make so many of their own original content that it just does end up being like a total crapshoot. And I'm at the point in my life where I would prefer to spend some of my time just consuming things I already know that I like. I'm just done. I can't be bothered. Humanity, I'm no, okay? New things? Psh, I'm an old man now. I'm leaning into it. Get your fucking frisbee out of my yard. I'm done with you kids. I keep it next time.
There's sufficiently many good old series that I feel like if you just create a long list and watch through them in the order of your list, by the time you get to the end, you probably have forgotten enough of the exact specifics to just start again. And you can just do that for the rest of the time. Just watch the same list over and over. Westworld, Battlestar Galactica, and just those two.
I can confirm that I have now watched Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, all of it to the end twice. I like the show. And
the most I've
easier.
seen of
It's easy to get to the end of that series because every alternate season. We should do this, Harv. Why the hell aren't we doing this? Every alternate season was just a recap of the last. They just show like all the footage from the last season and do some voiceovers, and then maybe at the end they tack on a coming back to the place that we were before to see if anything has changed. But it was literally just copy paste. We shouldn't even be broadcasting right now, Harvey. We should be just showing season 1. And then maybe occasionally we pause it and we go, yeah, I remember that. All right, re-roll it. That kind of a thing.
Oh, and with that, we'll take you to our segment of the day, which is season 1 of Harv and Born.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
And then we can do this real like depth first thing where we show the entirety of season 1 in its entirety. Then we carry on and we do a season 2. And then season 3 comes and we show the entirety of season 2, which includes the entirety of season 1. And just keep going. Rack up those exponential gains, you know.
Pad out the
Runtime.
footage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other one I saw Pikachu Detective, and it was good. I mean, there was like the first. It's one of these movies where you got to kind of give it the first 15 minutes of like sitting there going, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, the two kids that it's a Pokemon movie, so I expect to see like kids going out and catching Pokemon at the beginning, and they have kids go out and catch Pokemon in the beginning. The kids are definitely in their, mid-20s. Trying to appear as though they're maybe a little bit younger, but then the kid like acknowledges and he's like, "Oh, I work in insurance," and so it's like, okay, no, we're not doing a kids thing here, but just the scenario. There's a little bit of forcing some things together and breaking expectations, but the Pokemon movie was it's barely a kids movie. Like it's just. It seems like they know their audience. They know that a large portion of it has grown up and is still enamored with the nostalgia of Pokemon and stuff like that, and they built it around that, and it worked. It worked. Aquaman,
I tell you,
did not.
Oh yes, yeah. No, again, I haven't seen Aquaman either, but it's a DC film, right? So it's going to be terrible. Was it terrible?
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible.
It was goddamn awful.
It just didn't. No, the tonal shifts and I think the surprising thing for me was that Aquaman was relatively well reviewed. It seemed like it got a response. It made some money at the theaters and things like that, and I heard good things about it, and I watched it, and the best I can say about it is like where the Pikachu movie was like better than a kid's movie. It's not even really a kid's movie, but kids will enjoy it too. They won't get half the jokes, but that kind of thing. Aquaman is an adult's movie that only works if you're a kid. Like it doesn't hold together unless you're. So it's a kid's movie, and it should be. It's about superheroes and stuff, so these should be like kids' movies and stuff, and that's okay. But it just falls apart for me as an adult watching the film. There's so many parts while I'm watching that film where I'm like pulled out of it because I'm. A lot of the time, I'm sitting there going, okay, that last sequence of shots cost $12 million and contributed nothing to the plot. So that's a thing you did. The entire thing is very much like shot on blue screens, which is, fine, or green screens. They're shot on a, closed set, and then there's a digital, reality imposed, which is fine to me for the underwater stuff, because of course it's going to be, you're not going to actually, throw people underwater, and that's fine, but it sucks me out of it every time that they come out of the water, they're on land, they're somewhere, and I can just smell the uncanny valley of the fake, like, real... Like, you could have just been there. You could have gone there and done that. But no, we want the sky to be at a certain thing. So instead, we're going to build a set and we're going to lay out some chairs and some patio stuff. But then the actual ocean and everything behind it, we're not going to be there. We're going to do it on a giant blue screen set. And it's just, I can smell that. I can taste that. This desert isn't real. This Italian fucking vista over the ocean isn't real. And I know it. And it's hurting me. The sky is too perfect for every scene. The light changes are like the sun moves according to the movements of the characters. This is bullshit. And it drew me out. It didn't work. It did not work. It didn't hold. They also managed to do everything, like everything, Harv, that is in the hero's journey. Like if there is a manual somewhere out there that says the hero's journey and lists every single step, they did every single step, and some of them several times. It was just trite.
I can see. So I can really imagine that writer's office. They come back after releasing whatever the last DC film was, and guys, Guys, we're still getting slammed by the critics. The box office is fine because it's a DC movie, but the critics still hate it. Do you guys even know how to write? Maybe we should just go back to the drawing board. You know, go back and just do it by the book this time. And then the writers looked at each other and went, "Okay, yep, sure, we'll do it by the book. Do you have a book? Yeah, I think I've got a book in the back. Okay, I'll get a book. Okay, oh, well, I guess we just go through this in chronological order. Yep, let's just go through this.
Alexa,
every single page.
how do you write a screenplay? And then it just starts talking. They're like, okay.
Well, actually, hang on. Computer, how do you write a screenplay?
Screenplay is spelled S-C-R-E-E.
Don't know if you can hear that. Screenplay
She's
is
spelling
spelled...
it.
Yeah. Maybe that's the approach the writers took. Okay, let's go to, oh, here's an S. Okay, we need to have significant character growth. Okay, S for significant character growth. Yeah. Special relationships with, yeah.
In the first, 10 minutes, I swear, Aquaman, they do the whole, in fact, let me do this. I'll do it. Okay, ready? The whole, we're in a scene and we're doing something, and then someone appears and they walk through a door, and then they've got a helmet on, and they did that fucking 3-4 times in the first 15 minutes with just introducing characters. I'm gonna be important later.
Dwell on this one person's face for a sufficiently long time that the audience has a chance of going, yeah, I might recognize him later. Yeah. You know, I watched a mashup of some scenes from Avengers Infinity War recently. And I had a similar kind of uncanny valley experience with it. But it was I had an interesting conversation with one of my housemates, the one of my housemates who's actually worth talking to in this dump that I live in. He's studying photography, and he was telling me that his project this year, he's chosen uncanny realism as his thing. I don't think he called it uncanny realism, but that was the effect of it. So what on earth is uncanny realism? I asked, and it's when something is too real. And I instantly got what he meant, because when I watched Avengers Infinity War in the cinema, it looked really good. Best CGI of the decade, and all the amazing technology that goes into it. And even though it's computer generated, it's wow, holy shit, this looks great. When I watched this mashup of clips from Avengers Infinity War, and it shows the bit where all the characters come on screen and they're all running together, about to attack, it was so good that it was so crisp and so clear. I felt like I could see Robert Downey Jr.'s pores stretching as he moved. That level of crisp clarity was too clear. It was too real. It was these people are very obviously green screened into the same thing. You can just tell that they're not actually there, because it's too like a normal character would probably have a slight smudge on the lens, just a little bit, and that was so perfect, and it's so uncanny. But it was just weird to me how this YouTube video was high enough quality to show that, but when I watched it in the cinema, I didn't get that at all. I don't know what was going on there, but weird.
Yeah, they feed it in between the different scenes and stuff, and it just it works. It can work. It can work. Aquaman, it was completely, I think that's why it got decent reviews and that kind of thing, was that it did everything exactly the way that you were supposed to do it. But it started out tonally, and it seemed like it was going to not take itself too seriously. It was going to take the piss out of itself along the way, and it does that for about 15-20 minutes, and then after the 20-minute mark, it's nope, we're into, the second act now, and we are completely fucking committed to all the absolute and total seriousness of the underwater man who needs to become king of Atlantis by the end of this film, and all of the dramas, and the sun is going to be rising at just the right times and setting at just the right times. There's never going to be a fucking cloud in the sky unless we need an ominous looming sense, in which case we'll put the clouds in the sky. It was just the most fake, contrived, phony shit.
You know what?
But the acting was fine, and the only other thing that I would say about, the things that tore me out of it, that was just, this was just funny. It didn't matter, but it was just funny. Every time, because they're underwater, so often. Every time that somebody needs to like dramatically turn and walk away, but they can't walk. Because they're underwater, they're floating, so there's no like standing up and do. So everybody just sort of like wiggles their feet a little bit and turns around and just kind of floats away, and it's like you kind of took the piss out of your dramatic moment there, like fuck you, Daryl. And then he just kind of drifts away, and it's like, that doesn't work. They had other scenes too where they did the, when you usually do it a superhero film, it's like on land and you got people who can fly, so then they'll do that like where they actually start lifting off of the ground, and so it's like and it's a moment. But everyone can do that underwater, so
Everyone is
they were
floating
doing
all
that.
the time.
Yeah, and so like the guy would be like, making his big speech, the evil character, and then he'd like move up and he'd just float up, but it's like, yeah, but you're underwater, so everyone can, there's no power there. It's just stupid.
It's like, I feel like in some of those scenes there should have been some people who were just upside down.
Yeah.
Because you can do that underwater. And they should have been people who were like parallel to the ground, above them. You can do that stuff under. I watched a really terrible film over Christmas. Not to delay the stream by too much, but Jurassic World.
Oh yes. Yes.
So I had a conversation with my parents while we were watching it. This took place maybe 10 minutes before I got up and left. Because I just didn't I couldn't bring myself to continue watching the film. And it was for those of you watching Jurassic World, there's a theme park with all the dinosaurs in, and they want to create a new dinosaur that's better than all the old dinosaurs, so they do some genetic modifying, and they make a super magical dinosaur that has all the powers of anything you could ever want it to. Anything that any scriptwriter could, artificially just say, it has this, and therefore it can do whatever. And the characters, one of the main characters is this businesswoman who like runs the park. And as soon as this dinosaur obviously gets out and it munches on a few people, she's like, we can't evacuate the park. It would be bad for business. Lady, it's already bad for business. You've just allowed like 10 people to be eaten by one of your new products. If you don't evacuate the park, never mind the potential lost revenue of the customers who are in the park currently, when you get audited, because that's a thing that happens in reality, they're going to look at your decision to not evacuate the park. It's just so
OSHA
insane.
is going to have things to say about this.
Yeah, now that I'm in that kind of world where regulatory bodies are a thing that I'm aware exists, I can't stand listening to some generic, not even an evil character. This is someone who inherently was supposed to be a good character.
Yeah, she has a
Just them
redemption
saying
arc,
like,
if I recall.
yeah, oh, it would be absolutely terrible for business. We can't do that. We don't want to scare people. It's like, people have died, lady. Like, you're already past that point.
Yeah, if I recall
You're going to have to
correctly,
explain to these people's families.
the massive dinosaur in question is a cross of Velociraptor and Tyrannosaurus Rex and other things like that, and ultimately
And a
ends
chicken and a frog.
and a frog,
yeah.
and so it has the ability to like disappear on thermal imaging cameras and shit, and like just what do we need for the plot to move forward here? Well, they'd have to lose track of a 7,000-pound mammal that stands several stories tall.
There's that YouTube channel called
Maybe it sews an outfit and walks away. What do we do, Tom?
the Ryan George, he does those green screen pitch meetings that I keep on sending you occasionally. His pitch meeting for this one, I actually just watched it earlier, which is why this is on my mind. He's in answer to your question of how do we get a 10-story tall dinosaur to be able to just disappear, he's like listing all the possible genes it could have, and one of them is SEAL Team 6 genes. I don't know.
Damn it, somebody beat me to the punchlines. Fuck again.
So I had a good New Year. It was a lot of film watching. I Also played the entirety of The Outer Worlds, which was good. Enjoyed that. I gave up on making Let's Play videos of that real quick because there's too much work there and not enough game playing, so I just played the game instead. It was fun. Really enjoyed it. I'm back at work now, and the new year is good. All my projects I'm kind of put on the back burner, and I'm switching and I'm doing some work on the main kind of business app, the big project for the business right now. Because goddamn, it needs some help, and I'm kind of one of the only qualified people in that place to actually work on it. So,
Hmm.
so finally, practicality of the situation the business is in has caught up with my ideal student placement, and I'm doing some work on it. But I chose to. It's not that they asked me to. I wanted to. It's interesting work. It's just difficult. But what's also cool about this situation is that because there are only a few people who are actually either knowledgeable enough or I suppose just sufficiently close to the issue and the app itself to have any sort of impact on it. Uh, it's really up to me to just kind of choose what responsibilities to take on. And so I'm kind of now project managing the app developer who we've just recruited, who is like way more experienced than I am. But he's also super new to the company and new to the whole kind of tech stack and everything we're using. And no one else is really doing this stuff. So I've just started doing it because I saw it needed doing. So there's so much opportunity I have in this company where roles are such a loose kind of figment of everyone's imagination that you can just kind of do whatever needs doing. That this is great for my CV. It's going to be great for future interview material when I'm working for other companies. It's going to so much fucking experience right now.
Actually, so along those lines a little bit, one of the things that I did over our Harv and Pawn break was I started working on, well, I didn't really start working on it seriously, but I managed to like test a premise that I had around my cluster truck auto splitter speed running tool that I had developed to the point of beta called Split RP that automatically, hits the buttons for you when you clear the levels in cluster truck because I'm a cluster truck speedrunner. So my
You
tool is,
are?
yeah.
Sorry.
My tool is meant to it watches the screen and then tries to figure out based on what it's seeing on the screen where it is in the game, and as soon as you hit like a level complete screen, it would hit the I cleared that level button, and then it would pause the timing of the run until you exited the level complete screens that were not recording the time where you're not actually running the game. And that has the major benefit of removing your computer's specs from how fast you run. Because level load times between clicking the next level button, getting back into the game, are different if you have a more powerful computer. So people who have more powerful computers can gain as much as 6 or 8 frames per split in a game that's 90 levels long, and when you add that up, it turns into not insignificant amount of time saved just because you have more money to have better hardware. So that was the goal of this, and over the course of our break there, I went back into my code and came up with a different engine, because I had a theory for one that I developed on another project, where it just checks sort of the difference of a screenshot of what the level complete screen should look like against what is there, and then returns a percentage value that you can then use to sort of, figure out what it is. But we played with it a little bit, and it's been, it's been months, maybe a half a year since I played with it, and I think it's got way more potential, this new sort of engine, new heart of the thing. And I had a lot of fun, just tinkering with it and figuring it out. Biggest problem is just like actually taking the screenshots, and it looks like I'm just going to have to reduce the area. You can't do it in 1080p or 4K. I'm going to have to like reduce it to the size of a certain area that I want to analyze for comparison values and things like that, but it looks like it's got legs. And
Yeah.
and it looks like it's going to be more consistent than my other version, which my other version was, I mean, it got to beta, but even on my own runs, I eventually found that, you're running 90 levels, so you put in, 2 or 3 runs, and in the course of 2 or 3 runs, you'll get one level split incorrectly. Just because it's a very difficult thing to do to analyze the screen and know when you're coming in and when you're exiting and things like that. But so that was my little programming thing. We did it live on stream too, and people showed up for it, which has also been crazy. If you watch my streams and you're here as well, thank you so much for actually tuning into the boring shit. Or the stuff that maybe just wasn't on the menu when you came around. Most people found me because, recently anyway, the people who came aboard were because I was a cluster truck speedrunner, and then I started speedrunning Super Mario 64. And then I started fucking loading up and saying, hey, watch me type in Python for a little bit, and, 30 people stick around for a stream where I'm typing in Python and playing with that kind of stuff. It's like, all right, thank you. Am I legitimately making this thing interesting, or are you guys just that bored? I don't care. Thank you.
Well, Pawn, you have a way of making anything entertaining, including the topic of today's stream. Maybe.
I think my cat is snoring massively. My mom gave me for Christmas, she gave me a little thing like a cat condo. It's over here. And one of the cats, Paws, is actually taken to using it, and I just keep through my ear.
On the app that I was talking about, which is a self-assessment app for overnight sleep disorders, primarily respiratory sleep disorders, including snoring. On the app, some text in there currently says you have to tick a box for various kind of environmental factors that might affect your recording overnight. One of them is other snorers in the room, including bed partners or large pets, i.e. dog or cat. Turns out, dogs are pretty big snorers. And a lot of people who own dogs let them sleep in the room with them. And so, you're trying to isolate one person snoring and you've got a dog snoring all over the audio.
I like the idea of this. Because I like the idea of you guys write an AI that's gonna try and figure out some of the things that you can't yourself, and then the AI just ends up confusing dogs for humans, and then somehow Skynet and the nukes go launching.
Oh yeah, it's one step along that path. There's maybe 2 or 3 stops on the train of AI from where it is currently at dog snoring to where it will be, which is Skynet. Yeah. All this stuff, all my work is really, really cool. I feel like we need to have an episode just where I get to gush about how many different projects I'm doing and how interesting the
I can lend us 30 people who are willing to hang around for the boring shit, apparently.
Oh, what are you saying about my company? God fucking. Oh, is that a new emote? Dramacian.
It's the use of channel points in order to put I'll put it on you so that you can see it closer. You put sunglasses on the emote. You can squish them. You can make them black and white. You can do a lot of things to them. I like it. Twitch does a lot of things. Some of them I like, some of them I don't. I like this.
I do like that, actually. That was cool. They introduced that just before Christmas, right? We were playing around with that a little bit. But yes, welcome back to Season 2 of Harv and Porn. As Hologram has just commented, a Harv-centric episode where Harv just yammers on and on about something. Season 2, we've decided to be a bit more effective. We'll just have half of all the episodes where I only talk, and half of all the episodes where Porn only talks. It just, and we won't even call it Harv and Porn anymore. We'll just call it Harv on the episodes where it's me, and just Porn on the episodes where it's Porn. And this is the new kind of, pick and choose.
The other person will have to sit there the entire time with duct tape over their mouth. They cannot comment.
Oh, yes. Harv or Porn. Exactly, got chic. Harv or Porn.
Harv or Porn!
Harv and / or Porn. Okay.
We've danced around the maypole. Where the hell does that phrase come from? Hang on. Before we get off of this, I gotta look up.
Alexa! Maypole dancing.
But yeah, so the topic of today's talky talk of today's Harv and Porn is chronic illness. chronic illness and disease, inspired by, here's why we're doing this today. You know, you go away for a season, right? You're like, we did a season, we're going to have a break, we're going to do a hiatus, we come back, we hit it hard. And, like, both of us kind of went away, and then, for me in particular, I went away to a Christmas where my medical condition, my disability, myalgic encephalomyelitis, hit harder than it's ever hit before and kept me, you know, basically on the couch for longer than it's ever kept me before. And I had, we'll get into it, but it was a bad time. And so, like, we'll come back and we'll hit it hard. Did not happen and was not going to happen today. And the idea of, you know, let's come back and we'll have like new content, new this, new that, new the other thing. And I felt really bad about like even doing a show today, you know, like a week ago when I was thinking about this, because I'm thinking like, you know, all the effort that we put into like building up to season, like it was a year in the works. We finally got it going. We built it. We started it. You know, season 2 should have some, we should do some things. I should redesign the set a little bit or something like that, and none of that happened. And what like finally clicked for me and made it like, yeah, let's do the episode today, let's not put it off, was that the theme of this episode is that so little has changed here on Harv and Pawn. We had our little cold open skit there, little 30-second skit that literally took me like 2.5, 3 hours between 2 days kind of thing to just slap together. Wasn't a big deal. And the Christmas lights are still on the edge of the desk there. Why? Because I didn't have the energy to take them. I mean, Houston
No.
didn't have the
No. It's a
What?
New Year's tradition. You always leave up the decorations for a little while. That's intentional.
It isn't my fault that the decorations are still up. You're lazy, Pawn.
Fuck you, Houston. No, it's you're on. All right, anyway. But yeah, so the decorations are still up. But so basically, you know, I leaned into it and I was like, yeah, let's do that. The theme of this episode is basically very little of the things that I would have liked to have happened, and it has everything to do with the fact that, you know, I have a chronically debilitating disease, as do millions of people who are, you know, more or less resigned to hermitous lives, living in their homes, only going out, you know, when they absolutely need to, because it's such a strain and a difficulty to go out. And so today we were going to talk about the various ways that having a disease that is not going away, it's not a sickness, it's not an illness, you know, just something you kind of got to live with, or that is going to take a very long time to fight away, if there is a way to fight it away, how that, you know, just personal experiences dive down the hole. And that's the topic for today. I'm just going to sip the beer for a while.
That is the topic for today. So,
oh, and Rex Gates says, do brain tumors count? If so, I can add to the conversation. Yeah, Rex has been living with a brain tumor for since like as long as I've known him, which has been almost the like 1 year, maybe less than I've been doing YouTube and stuff like this. So, you know, half a decade at least since I've known Rex that he's been living with a brain tumor that I believe they told him from the start, like, it's a limited amount of time, you know, wrap things up, and still just going.
So that's what they said, Rex. Like, yeah, you've only got so much left on the clock. Just wrap up your affairs. Yeah.
More or less. 12 years. Wow. I'm catching up. Wait, no, that's not how time works.
So anyone else in chat? You guys got any chronic / acute / somewhere in the middle perhaps kind of conditions? I don't. I'm you know, I'm fine.
You don't know.
My dad,
You're
however,
young yet.
Yes, I'm young. And I also have my dad's genes, which means that probably later I'll get stuff. But my dad has chronic lymphocytic leukemia. So that's all well and good. His is pretty long term. It's not too terrible right now, but it's one of those things. There's no cure. Not yet, anyway. There's not really anything you can do to treat it other than irradiate your body in various specific ways. and it's just going to keep getting worse, and he's just going to die eventually. And yeah, we don't really have a timeline. There's no estimation of how long that's going to take. Could be, a good decade, a good couple of decades. But it does cause him issues on the day to day. So, from my perspective here, talking about this project, I guess it's the great project of life, isn't it? We're talking about this topic. Yeah, well, kind of between us, we're covering both bases of having it and then being that person won over from the person who has it, and experiencing it secondhand.
Hmm.
Which actually you
is
also cover by yourself because your mum has Sjögren syndrome, right?
yes, Sjögren syndrome, which at this point I feel is like, I think that ME, what I have, myalgic encephalomyelitis, aka SEID, systemic exertion intolerance disease, aka CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. I think they're basically the same disease with a couple of different symptoms. I think they fundamentally come from the same thing, and I am as qualified as anyone to speak to that because doctors don't know shit about this disease. But I was curious just to check again. Does your father have acute or chronic, right? Because
Chronic, yeah.
chronic leukemia.
Yeah.
The difference is being acute leukemia, attacks quickly and it's moving fast, and chronic is just kind of there and
Yeah.
slowly moving, slowly
And
dragging you down.
yeah, in my dad's case, it mostly, it manifests itself in the typical kind of chronic symptoms of leukemia, which are swollen lymph nodes in the neck and in the armpits, and to the extent where, depending on kind of how he is on a particular day, it's just painful for him to have his arm down because it's compressing on those swollen nodes.
Oh,
And so sometimes if I'm at home, I'll go down to the basement and, he's kind of got one arm just like up resting on something just because he can't have it down like that. And otherwise, incredible weakness in his limbs. I'll when we kind of get into specifics, I'll talk more about that because there's some interesting stuff he kind of came across on his search for how can I alleviate these goddamn symptoms? And one of them was just eating fuck tons of potassium. Apparently, there's some kind of chemical chain for how your body creates glucose to store in your muscles, and potassium is involved in that. And he reckons that an amount of potassium in his bloodstream that would, in a healthy person, be used for the creation of glucose is just getting sucked up by his, lymph nodes that are swollen and cancerous. And so he's just on a super high potassium diet and says that it kind of overcomes that limb fatigue a little bit. But it's a similar, I think it's in a maybe not as bad of a boat as myalgic encephalomyelitis is, in that doctors, I don't know, just try eating fuck tons of chocolate milk. Maybe that'll help, I don't think it's quite there, but there's definitely things like this potassium diet that they don't recommend, and certain people say it works and certain people say it doesn't, and no one really knows. And yeah.
So hard issue to get into without it turning like really dark and shitty, and so it's just gonna get dark and shitty. Now, here's how I'm gonna do this.
Fasten your seatbelts, boys.
We'll start with the fun and exciting story of how my first conditions emerged. I'll talk about how it got started.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Grab the popcorn.
So, I was watching Aquaman. No.
And it was just making me so tired,
God damn. I feel
I was
different
falling
now.
asleep during it.
I was working as so my first symptoms that I had to sort of retroactively realize were my first symptoms actually came while I was in the monastery. I was Zen monk, in case you hadn't heard. I was studying Zen
You were a
Buddhism.
Zen monk?
A couple of 3 years. But yeah, I was studying Zen Buddhist, and I was a monk. And basically, the schedule of a monk, the life schedule of a monk, is basically like military. Wake up at 5 a.m. is a late wake up. You're up at 4:45 in order to be ready to start the day at 5 a.m. And that's if you're not in charge of too many things. And I, by the end of my term, which is when my symptoms started to come on, was in charge of fucking everything, which was great for me because I was having these symptoms that I didn't understand where they were coming from and what was going on. And so, like, I can look back and say that was my first instance of where this hit me was very, you could easily write it off. If it didn't keep happening over and over again. I went to meditation in the morning, which incidentally would have been a morning where I probably woke up at 3:30 in the a.m. in order to prepare the breakfast smoothie for my Zen master and everyone else and myself, in order to then start planning the day for work because I was running the commercial kitchen. And then when it started to get toward 5 a.m., which is when our first meditation session would start, then I would go around and hit the wake-up call for all the people who weren't in charge of starting the fucking day. And then I would do that. I would sing the fucking, and that was, just meant to wake you up. Just being a nuisance, basically. And then
I like that. I like that image of just like a load of incredible, serene monks resting after a hard day's meditation. And in the morning, one person is allocated to just stand up and go,
and it's just the Lion King starts off or something.
Yeah.
But so I walk around hitting the juke beats, this little thing, and tick, 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 and then singing that for that. That goes for like about 12 minutes. And then after that, I immediately go to the fucking drum and boom, 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 and play that for 5 minutes. And then, depending on if someone else was able and available, then, someone else would be hitting the bell. But if not, then I'd be running in and going to the bell and bang, and then da-da-da, ba-da-dee-dee-doo. It's very, like, there's a lot of.
You were also a
shit.
one-man band at this point. Wow.
A lot of movements to the opening of a day at a Zen center, basically, and I was in charge of all of them at various points. But so that's my day.
You should have had one of those kits where you've got like a drum strapped to your chest, then you got the cymbals, and then you like hit your elbows around your back to do a triangle, a walking band. One of those monkeys with a wind-up kind of, yeah.
I'm fine. But so yeah, we did that to start the day. We go to meditation. Meditation that day, if I recall correctly, was a 2-hour meditation, which is, there's a break in the middle of it. So you do the meditation for, first after you get all the shit that I've already described done, then everybody shows up and we sing another mantra thing to start it out for 10-12 minutes, and then everybody can take their seats and we begin the meditation. And so you're on the mat for maybe like 40 minutes the first time, 45 minutes the first time, and then it's the top of the hour, bing bang, we get up, we do a walking meditation where we just walk around the hall in a circle, and then you sit back down and you have another hour's worth of meditation. Basically, any time that we sat down for meditation that morning, I fell asleep. And I had been doing this more and more and more and more. And I was so much so that I was very good at it. I could sit in perfect posture with my hands in the mudra and without snoring, or else people would have, the Zen master would have been like, wake up! So I was very good at sleeping on the mat at this point because this had been sneaking up on me more and more. And it was a problem that other Zen students had regularly. When I started to have it, I was almost kind of proud of it. Like, hey, I'm finally comfortable enough on the meditation mat that I can fucking fall asleep while we're all trying to meditate, just like everybody else. I hadn't had that problem. Meditation was always, interesting to me, and I was starting to have this, constant issue of falling asleep. So I fell asleep through both halves of the meditation after being on the mat for 5 to 10 minutes. When we got done with the meditation, the senior student came over and said, "So, boss, what do you want to do today?" Because, again, I'm in charge of everything, including running the,
Sorry, wait, how
commercial
much were you in charge of?
a lot. Many
Oh, I see.
things. But yeah, so she comes over and like the other students who are going to be supporting the, we're going to work today. And she comes over and says, so how do you want to get started today, boss? And I said, actually, I could use to lay back down now. And I was kind of hoping that she'd ask, like, oh, are you feeling okay? And then I could have said, not really. But she didn't. She was just like, oh, okay. And then she went back to the Zen master and told him, Risham didn't start. That was my name. I was Risham. Risham didn't start the workday today. He decided to go lay down. And the Zen master was like, well, get him up. And because, he'd only gotten the half of the story. And so, I was laying down for 5 minutes, hadn't fallen back asleep yet. And then she came in, the senior student came in and said, Sunam wants you downstairs working. And I said, okay. And she left, and I was not happy. I was angry in the first place, and I, angrily, because nobody seems to give a shit about, it's the one day I run everything around here. The first day that I say something about, I could use to go back to sleep. Who gives a shit? Nobody. Nobody's like, oh, why? Is there a problem? No, they've been waiting for me to do this because they assume I'm lazy or something. So I'm a bit pissed off in the first place, is what I'm saying. But I get up and, and you're just flat on the floor. There's mats that we lay down, but I get up from my little mat there, in my little cupboard that we slept in. And I I take like 3 steps and I immediately just go straight over. And, kind of thing that can happen, you just stand up too quick. If it's happened once to you, you'd be like, okay, you just stood up too quick. I immediately fell straight over with no control over my fall. It was not a choice. It was a fucking hit the floor kind of thing. And, get myself back up, and I don't have my balance. I am now, using the fucking wall to keep myself up so that I can go down the stairs and begin the workday without any sense of just, everything's kind of spinning a little bit. And because I'm feeling, I'm acting very much like a child who's not been paid attention to enough, I just go downstairs and I walk around grabbing I don't say anything about it, just walk around grabbing things and just and almost falling over, just letting everybody see, letting the senior student see, hey, thanks for getting me up and not having any fucking concern for my health kind of. So I made a bit of a childish kind of thing out of it, just by not saying anything. But that was my first instance of this hitting me. One of the major factors behind myalgic encephalomyelitis is what the medical industry has, churched up with all of their ancient Greek language and things to be called orthostatic intolerance. I'm intolerant of orthostasis. I'm intolerant of being stood on my feet.
Oh, that's what
Horrible.
orthostasis means.
Yes, I don't know.
Orthogonal static? Yeah, I can't figure that one out. Okay, I'll take that as read. Sure, standing up.
So yeah, that was my very first instance of okay, that happened, but I didn't know what it was at that point, and maybe you get to the point, when it first came on for me, especially in that scenario, I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm just overworked and I'm not happy to be here anymore, not enjoying what I'm doing. When your physical body starts to tear down you realize that there's no difference between the physical body and the mind. Because, what it did to, where I found myself was starting to consider that maybe I'm not, and the people around me as well, obviously, they started to consider, well, I think he's, just sort of losing his taste for the practice. Maybe he doesn't want to be here anymore. And I was thinking that and wondering it too. But, it had everything to do with not having the physical strength to continue doing what I was doing, and also being mentally torn down every day. It is, there's a mental depression that goes on from being, having the less energy and being in pain and things like that. And I didn't, at that point, even recognize that I was in pain. It would be years before I realized that I was having pain. And as I sit here right now, I have a intellectual awareness of the fact that I'm in pain, but I have to focus on the areas where I'm carrying tightness right now in order to actually feel the pain, because it's just so ever present. It's just background noise. And it came on so slowly over the course of this disease ramping up that I don't feel like I'm in pain until I notice that I am acting like a fucking crazy person. Like my emotions are destroyed and my, just everything. I'm losing grip on reality and just like, I'm going to get really angry or really sad and shit. And then I realize, oh, I've been being tortured consistently. And the only way that you know that you're in pain is when it gets taken away, which I found the weed was very effective at.
I was going to say, your description there of not really feeling it because you've been feeling it for so long sounds quite reminiscent of tinnitus. I've got a couple of friends who've got tinnitus, and one in particular, when I've spoken to him about it, he says like he almost doesn't even know what I'm talking about to begin with when I describe how he has previously described it to me, and then he's like, "What? Oh yeah. Well, it's not like I can hear stuff all the time, but okay, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I can just hear stuff all the time." And yeah, it's like he doesn't perceive it as hearing anymore because it's just such a background. It's become the norm.
It's always
You know?
on. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so for years I didn't even realize that I was in pain. And because all right, so hand soup can't. When did you get your diagnosis? I don't have a diagnosis. I live in the United States of America, and my condition is almost. It's as close to not being understood by medical science at all as it could be, while they still have some information about it. So I sought out doctors who could, treat or diagnose me in my area and found out none exist in the state of Michigan. There might be one who's on the other side of the state, but I say might be because I chased down a number of people who were listed as treating and having patients with the condition that I have self-diagnosed with, only to find that, once I called their offices or showed up for an appointment, that they had no idea about the condition whatsoever. So it's entirely possible that I don't have ME, CFS, SEID, as it's called, that it's something else that presents exactly, similarly. It's possible that I have Sjögren syndrome, because the symptoms between my mother and myself very similar, but she has certain specific conditions that I haven't experienced yet at all. So who's to say? Who really knows? Did anyone realize how bad the issue was? Asked Tomsh, but we're going to go to a live stream break shortly here because we've been here for an hour. But before then, I will say that no, and I didn't, self-diagnose while I was at the Zen Center. It took me years after leaving the Zen Center to realize that there was something going on that wasn't just momentary, that wasn't psychological, that wasn't just I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm manifesting my internal, desire to this is boring to me as a physical response, or trying to come up with reasons to leave or something like that. I mean, especially when you're involved in a practice like Zen Buddhism and meditation and looking inward, it's easy to imagine that you would be capable of sort of fucking with your own physical body in order to manifest your internal desires. So it's like, it was kind of the worst situation I could have been on to have my first symptoms, because, there's everything's a gray area. There is no line between physical and mental symptoms. One crosses the boundary of the other. Being in constant pain affects the state of the mind, and the state of the mind affects whether or not you are in pain today. If you can distract yourself with something that you enjoy doing enough, then you might not feel the pain that you're in. And, if you're in the pain is going to seep into your mental state and change how you're viewing the world, and there's, it can depress you and all that kind of stuff. So there's no real difference between the mind and the body when it comes to disease. Or anything, really, says the erstwhile Zen monk. That was my first episode, and there were more episodes that came on later. And we will talk somewhat to that, but mostly I'll leave it with there in terms of my first episode. But I think when we come back from the break, Harvey, maybe you can talk about the sort of diagnosis era of your dad and what sort of brought that about. And, if there were any early
Yeah.
signs and early symptoms, or if it was just a routine doctor's visit and that kind of thing. But don't tell us yet! Because it's going to be a surprise! Oh, it's going to be such a surprise. It's going to be so fun. After the break, we get to find out about leukemia. It'll be great. If you can't laugh.
Fun conversation topics abound. Yeah. Before, as a little teaser of that, I'll just say that one of the things that I always come back to for some reason whenever I think about things that my dad has said about leukemia and kind of his outlook on his condition. One of them is that he's like, well, at least I have chronic leukemia rather than some other kind of condition, because chronic leukemia is most prevalent in relatively old white men. And if there's anyone that's got the money to donate to research into solving their problem, it's a relatively old white man. So it doesn't have a treatment now, or doesn't have a cure now, but it's probably got the funding for research. So, at least he has that. I wonder, do you know whether myalgic encephalomyelitis is more prevalent in certain demographics than others? Have you looked that up?
Yes. It is a woman's disease. 80% of the people who have CFS or something like that, something around 80%, are female. And because of that, it has the opposite situation of white men. Oh, perfect. Because this has been a condition that people have linked to like 2,000 years of history. That 2,000 years ago, and probably 1,000 years ago, and probably 200 years ago, knowing humanity, the treatment was that, oh, you're an undersexed woman, you need to get married and have babies. They used to call it it was hysteria. That was an alternate name for, this condition. That was like the original where this condition would be thrown over. They just call it hysteria. So women's hysteria. Woman is being hysterical. She needs to get laid, and because of our social mores, she will need to be married and have children. And so we'll just say, you need to, get married and have kids, when what we really need to are trying to say is, you need to get fucked, and that'll take care of it. And that was medicine's diagnosis.
You're clearly just looking so tired and in pain all the time because you haven't had a good bang. And with that, if the bot was up, we would add plenty of quotes in this first half of the episode. But with that, we'll go to a live stream break. We'll be right back in about 7 minutes or so. As always, please consider, if you're enjoying the show, maybe enjoying is the wrong word, if you're on this particular episode of the show, if you're finding it insightful, something to that effect, then consider supporting us and helping us pay the bills and pay for groceries and whatnot, and keeping the show going over at patreon.com/harvandporn, or right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/harvandporn. And you can just cheer and sub and do all that stuff, and it'll be good. And you'll get access to behind the scenes and be able to vote on discussion topics that we talk about in the future.
But don't do it until 7 minutes from now, because we're gonna go take a pee, which is what you should do.
Yes, you have 7 minutes to empty your bladder. Enjoy.
We're back. We're back.
We're back. I'll be
Did you
back.
flush?
And thus I am. I did.
Oh, okay.
I
I
did.
don't know if I did.
Did you?
My toilet will take care of it though. It has a slow leak, so it'll be fine.
Slow leak down into the correct pipes, or just kind of a slow leak out onto your bathroom floor?
Don't ask questions you don't want answers to.
If you won't like the answer, you don't want to ask. Yes, welcome back to the Harv and Porn Show. And it is the Harv and Porn Show. We may have referred to it as Harv and Porn, but that's just an abbreviation. It is the Harv and Porn Show. And the and the show on the end make it a real legit thing. You get what I'm saying? It's a real thing. It's legit.
Yeah, it's not just two
Legitimate.
people sitting here rambling for 2 hours. It's legitimate. Holy spooples. Do you see what's in chat, Harvey?
Oh, it's Bavilia.
Just
It's
gifted
Bavilia.
7 subscriptions
Excellent.
to people in chat. They've gifted a total of 17 in the channel. Bavilia gifting subs to Rex Skates, Twitch Where You 13, Christoph, the thighs, Christoph's thighs, Wex
Thighs,
Wex, 1, 2, 3, Ezra, Tarkus Take, and Greg Aubrey. Greg is here. I saw you here as well. Greg Aubrey and I of Dead Letters and Light of the Stars.
Hey.
Travels. We used to be in bands together, basically.
Hey, Greg.
Excellent.
Hello.
And
You are now a
also
sub. Congrats.
filmed Catch Him Whilst Under If Does He Strays with Brandon and I from a previous episode. I mentioned that.
No, you got the title wrong. It's Catch Him in the Event That He Just So Happens to, on certain occasions, perhaps stray from his inherent course of action.
That's yep. There you go. There's Greg's
Fairly
sub.
sure that's the exact title.
Thank you so much, Bavilia. That is a huge help, a huge donation, basically, is what that comes down to.
Yeah.
And it means that a whole bunch of you in chat now can use the friggin' emotes. Drop us a, Harv and Pawn in chat as we continue talking about the very exciting and not at all depressing subject of chronic illness.
And it also means that those of you who've just become subs, you can now vote in the discussion polls, which we'll be sending around periodically. So make sure to check your emails every so often, because I'll be sending you those things, or Porn will, depending on which of us does the admin.
Usually.
It's usually me.
And also,
So-
in reference to you, I wanted to find out, because I took the time to tell my first instance of experiencing what I would later choose to believe, because diagnosis is so far away, is, my chronic illness, myalgic encephalomyelitis. How did you and your family find out that your father had leukemia?
Yeah, to be honest, a lot of the specific memories are pretty muddy for me. He was
How long has it been?
diagnosed. Yeah, I think a couple of years ago now, about a couple of years or so. And what I do remember specifically was that I think Mum and him had gone away on a holiday or something, and they just got back. And within a few days of having got back, he felt like he was having a heart attack. And I think that was kind of the first specific, at least other symptoms might have come up in retrospect for him, in hindsight. But this was like, oh, okay, shit, I'm having a heart attack. And so a doctor was called out to the house, and they did some, they checked his blood levels and found like, oh yeah, but you looks like it anyway from the blood levels that you've had a serious heart attack. This and this and this in your blood test are way too high. Like the levels of this is crazy high. And
Wait a second.
that's
I don't want to undermine the serious, what we're talking about here, but
sure.
you have to be lying. A doctor came to your house. Come on,
Well,
Harvey.
Paramedics, I believe, is probably the correct terminology. Yeah.
I was hoping that you were actually going to be like, yes, in Europe, we have a medical system that isn't shit, and a doctor will come to your house if this is required.
Well, I think that is the case, actually. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Paul. Sorry, America. But especially
Sorry,
in...
America. We're all sorry.
I think that's much more prevalent in other countries. To be honest, there's things in the UK. Well, yeah, whatever. UK health system is another topic. But yeah. So they took his blood readings, and I don't remember the specifics of exactly what was called what, but in particular, a few of these levels were crazily high, and it was in line with myocarditis, which is inflammation of the heart, I believe. So classic thing that people who have heart attacks get. And then it turned out, oh, no, wait, you didn't have a heart attack. You just have pneumonia. Oh, okay. So apparently he didn't have a heart attack. He just caught pneumonia, perhaps while they were on holiday or something. And as a result, was feeling very weak, feeling, had these irregular heart irregularities and inflammation and all that kind of stuff. And then somewhere along the line, I think they looked again at his blood levels and went, huh, so you definitely have pneumonia, but these levels that we saw that indicated you had a heart attack, therefore don't quite make sense because you have an incredibly high white blood cell count. And that was one of the things. And so then it was a matter of kind of a couple of consultations later. And yeah, somewhere along the process, oh yeah, high white blood cell count, that's leukemia.
Do you recall them doing, a bone marrow, like pulling bone marrow? Because that is, from what I've heard, extremely painful. They basically shove a giant fucking needle all the way into the bone in order to extract some bone marrow.
Funnily enough, actually, I've spoken to a couple of people who have donated bone marrow, and they say that the it being incredibly painful is either a myth or just very rare.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm actually considering donating it because it's one of those things that we need those kind of stem cells in that bone marrow massively. It's actually one of the experimental treatments for leukemia is a stem cell
Transplant? Mm.
transplant. Yeah. No, I think he probably did have it. It sounds vaguely familiar, but like I said, kind of muddy memories. I think the reason that my memories are so particularly muddled about the exact forthcoming of his condition is because my parents actually didn't tell me a lot at the time. Certainly not when it happened. I was kind of informed with a bit of a lag period while they processed it and then decided how to pass on the information to try and reduce our, you know, anxiety over his condition. But yeah, it's one of those things that's never really seemed real, and it only ever seems real when I kind of visit. And he looks fine on one day, and then he doesn't look fine on another day, and you know how it is in that kind of. Yeah, so essentially, he's in the situation right now where, as a result of his leukemia, he's just incredibly prone to catching infections. So I think the pneumonia came back for a brief period. And since then, he's also had various other infections. He's constantly kind of battling a cold or a cough or something like that.
Pneumonia, which is, if I'm right, mainly characterized by fluid in the lungs. Yeah,
Yes, I think
making
so.
it difficult to breathe because you've got a portion of your lungs in the areolas. They're not called that, but the things are
Generic lung anatomy. Something down there.
It's something with an A, I think. But yeah, the brachioles and things like that are they can't actually access the oxygen.
Yeah, I don't know much more about it than by the sounds of it you do.
Alveoli. Thank you, Greg Aubrey. See? Areola. I know enough to be stupid. That's basically my contribution to this show. I know enough to be a git.
Hey, everybody knew what you were trying to refer to, and that's basically the same as managing to refer to it. So, you know, language is fluid. So essentially, that's the situation with my dad. The origin story of his condition is somewhat less detailed and exciting than
Well, I
your
made a lot of
Zen
that shit
monk
up.
one-man band.
I was never in a monastery. I'm just trying, I'm an entertainer first and foremost. So, And then the dinosaurs, they crashed through and they changed their body temperature and no one could find them. It was amazing the way that I came down with my disease. Oh.
But yeah.
So I've got some web pages pulled up here. So fuck it. Let me just read. Because, you can Google this shit, but I don't know. Leukemia is a cancer of the blood and bone marrow. In simple terms, cancer is defined as the uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells. Cancer can develop anywhere in the body. In leukemia, this rapid, out-of-control growth of abnormal cells takes place in the bone marrow of bones. These abnormal cells then spill into the bloodstream. Unlike other cancers, leukemia generally doesn't form into a mass or a tumor that can be seen in imaging tests such as X-rays. And there are types of leukemia, and, broadest and most generic are, acute leukemia, where the cells are rapidly dividing and the disease progresses quickly. And chronic leukemia, where they have features of both immature and mature cells. Some of these cells have developed to the point where they do function as the cells they were meant to become, but not to the extent their normal counterparts do. The disease typically worsens slowly as compared to acute leukemia.
You end up with, I think they're called lymphocytes, which are essentially cancerous white blood cells, and they actually enlarge and stop doing their job and whatnot. But because they become enlarged, they create less space for there to be red blood cells in your bloodstream. Physically, they just take up all the room. And that means various things, like you're not getting oxygen through to where it needs to go as effectively. But it also just means that you bleed easily. I think it can lead to. I haven't read this, and I haven't heard anyone say this specifically, but I think it's likely it can lead to higher blood pressure as a result as well, because I know that there was a period of time when my dad was prescribed, uh, high blood pressure medication, and it did not help, did not work, completely messed with him, constantly lightheaded, and as much as the ongoing advice to everybody, and it's sensible advice that you should follow, is to don't finish your prescriptions until your prescription has ended. He just could not take any more of it and knew it wasn't helping, and so he stopped taking those meds. But
yeah, thinning the blood and things like that doesn't really sound that great for someone who doesn't, especially if you've got like symptoms of pneumonia, and then additionally your red blood cells, which carry the oxygen to the tissue, are also not really making their way around. Jesus, let's just tackle who needs oxygen, really? Who needs to breathe?
I think actually, this high blood pressure diagnosis of his might have been, in retrospect, the first indication of it. I'm struggling to remember the exact of which came first and what came before what. But yeah, I remember him taking those meds and kind of realizing that they were pointless and not helping. That was a while ago now.
My mother goes through that a lot, and I do want to come on to her condition, because honestly, it's easier for me to talk about her condition than mine. But as long as I'm reading web pages, there's a site called meaction.net, from which I'm pulling this information if you'd like to observe it yourself. An estimated 15 to 30 million people around the world are suffering from myalgic encephalomyelitis, also known as systemic exertion intolerance disease, also known as chronic fatigue syndrome. 1 million are Americans, 250,000 are British people, 100,000 Australians, and 560,000 Canadians. An estimated 75 to 85% of them are women, 80 to 90% of them are undiagnosed. Hence the estimated 15 to 30 million. Pretty big margin of error in there, because we don't know.
In those numbers, what was it? 1 million Americans and 250,000 British people? Is that's insane. That implies that if it was statistically equally likely amongst our two nations, that there's only 4 times as many people in America as there is in Britain. But that's not right. So I imagine that it's not actually the case that there's only 1 million Americans. It's probably just severely underdiagnosed in America.
Yeah, in fact, like, this little chart doesn't like lay that out, but them saying 1 million. So I'm assuming that list is sort of the like diagnosed the number, maybe, a rounded kind of thing. I don't know. But yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And I've heard estimates for America of 2 million to 3.5 million, that kind of a thing, which when you think about it turns into 1% of the American population possibly has this disease, and the amount of like research and funding and effort and, access to medicine that this 1% of the entire population doesn't get. Because, when you think about it, 2 million Americans in a disease that doesn't show up until you're adult aged. That means that, there's a third of the population of the country that just isn't going to get this or isn't going to know that they have this yet. It's, and I do that math that way because I've looked at, because of my recent previous lookings into just sort of the prison system of America, and that we have 2 million people in prison, which when you come down to how many people are allowed to be in prison is an entire percentage point of the American population. Like, you can't be in prison if you're 14. But yeah, the symptoms of ME, which is what I have, are orthostatic intolerance, not being able to stand on your feet for very long, unrefreshing sleep, pain in the muscles and joints, headaches of a new type, pattern or severity, cognitive symptoms such as confusion, difficulty retrieving words, poor working memory, spatial instability, and disorientation, all of which I have experienced, sensitivity to light, sound, or vibration, taste, odor, or touch, so just hypersensitivity generally, which is also I have often. Sometimes it's been the lights for just doing a show and stuff. I have worn fucking sunglasses because I can't deal with it. Gastrointestinal systems such as nausea or abdominal pain. Only time I've experienced nausea is when I am in sort of an episode, which I'll talk about later. Muscle fatigue, weakness, and word I've never read before, fasciculation. It's when your body becomes fascist, but your mind isn't. Fasciculation, poor coordination, and ataxia.
I can't explain it. My body just really wants to be a Nazi. I keep telling it no, but it's like Heil Hitler all the time.
Yeah, it just keeps doing this. just autonomic and endocrine systems such as poor temperature regulation, cold or heat intolerance. I have these very often. Immune systems such as tender lymph nodes, don't get that. Recurring sore throats, don't get that. I cough a lot, but it has nothing to do with it. Fevers or flu-like symptoms, and new food or chemical sensitivities. None of these have struck me as of yet. But those are generally the symptoms there. So basically, you stand on your feet for any given amount of time, then your symptoms are going to become worse. And in reference to, what was it, like sensitivity to light or sound, it wasn't so long ago that my sister got married. My half-sister. It almost feels shitty to say that. My half-sister, she doesn't really count.
Oh, I was going to say, like, you have a sister? Well.
Yeah. So my half-sister got married, and I went to the wedding, and the plan was, and it was a very well-contrived, like people had thought about, it was only like a 45-minute drive away from where I lived. And from a lot of the people who were coming there, it wasn't more than an hour. It was just a bit to the west of where I am. And but the plan was for like the main people who were involved in the wedding party, I presume also so that they could get good and fucking drunk. Was that we were going to do the wedding, and then they had rooms rented, and if you were part of the wedding party, you've got a room, you can stay there overnight. I was there for 2.5 hours, maybe 3. I managed to get through the service. The service was difficult, the actual, like, them being wed. It was a short service, relatively speaking, 25 minutes maybe. But, like, in the process, there was a portion of it where you're supposed to, like, stand, and, everybody walks in, and then you sit, and then you stand again, and everybody walks out. And by the end of, like, standing while everybody was walking out, I was already like, okay, this isn't gonna... I might have sat down, I don't even remember. But, then came the, after the... What do you do after the wedding? You go to the party? What's the party called? Party after the wedding is...
After party.
Reception. right?
Reception, sure.
Is that what we call it? The reception. So when, like, I had, by the time the reception started to kick off, by which I mean we'd had food. They had served us food, but then the food was taken away, and then like the dance floor opened up, and all that was going to happen. By the time that the dance floor was opening up and the lights were coming on and the music was going to start to blare, I had already spent at least 20 minutes sitting in a coat room that I had found away from everything that was going on, having turned the lights to the coat room off with a chair facing to the back of the coat room because I was getting, it was just bad. I'd been on my feet for too long. I was putting out way too much energy doing this. And so I just sat there with the lights off, trying to catch my breath because that's another thing that happens. And then I, eventually went back to the main room and, for about half an hour I went back and forth with asking, like, do I ask for someone to take me home? Because there's someone here who would drive me the 45 minutes home, but then I'm taking them away from it. Like, you go through this shit. Like, when you have a chronic disease that makes you less functional than you've been before, part of it that gets overlooked is that it's not just you're less capable, but that you make commitments, you still trying to live your life, and at some point you have to make a commitment that's like, I know this is going to be hard for me and it might go wrong, but I'm going to make the commitment. And then when you have to bail on the commitment, sometimes midway through, you feel like a piece of shit, and there's no avoiding that. Like, I have a disease, the people around me maybe know it and accept it, and that there's no problem with it, but for me, I still have to go through the half an hour of going back and forth on whether or not to ask somebody to take me home, because I know that if I ask them, that I'm taking them away from the wedding, and maybe they just decide, I'm done with the wedding, I had to take the guy home, or maybe they come back, but they lost, an hour and a half driving 45 minutes. It's just like, it's a consideration that a decent human being has to make, and so I'm sitting there trying to decide whether or not to ask my uncle if he'll drive me back so that my dad can stay at his fucking daughter's wedding. And then they turned the lights and the the flashing strobing lights for the dance floor on and started blasting the music, and that made the decision for me, because I couldn't, even though there was like a hotel room that had been rented for me, that I could have said, well, will you take me over to the hotel room? That wasn't even, like, that was an option that was off the table. I can't, at this point, I am, like, the symptoms that I'm having are so, like, reminiscent of a panic attack that I can't, no, you deliver me to another place that I'm unfamiliar with, and it's not my bed, and it's not that won't work. I need to go home. And so, my sister's wedding, I left after 2.5 hours because I couldn't be there anymore, and I had to drag my uncle away, and thank God that my uncle was there, and so I didn't have to, like, have my dad do it at his daughter's wedding. But that is the reality of having a chronic disease, is that certain things are going to come up and you're going to want to be a part of them.
I want to take this just a couple of steps back for a second and completely ruin the mood that you're experiencing right now. When you were talking about how you're sitting in the cloakroom on the chair facing the other end of it with the lights off, it gave me an idea for a skit that we could do called situations that look like they're out of a horror movie but are actually just people with ME. Because you can imagine someone walks into that cloakroom just trying to get their coat, and they see a person sitting in the dark, facing in a chair, facing a wall. And how you just have this character who goes around and keeps on encountering you trying to deal with like the horror and the terrible ME, and they just get shit scared every single time because they misinterpret what's going on. The massive
That's absolutely between... that's a part of it too, is being aware when you're like stealing yourself away to some private space because you can't deal with it anymore, that somebody walks by and they kind of look in and they look at you like, huh? And it's like, oh god, what are they? Okay, so I recently had an episode in the grocery store. This is funny. I recently had an episode at the grocery store. I did my grocery shopping. I had to get it done. I knew that I was in the depth of the worst that it's ever been, but I needed food. There was no food left in the house. So I went to the grocery store, and I ended up having an attack where I ended up like lying on a fucking. I literally had to lie down. I had a hot flash where I grabbed a Dr. Pepper from the shelf and opened it up and just started chugging it. And fuck it, if anybody wants to, hey, you got to pay for that first. Go fuck yourself. But I ended up lying on like a pallet moving cart that they had in the aisle because it's Family Dollar and it's a piece of shit store that nobody actually cares about. You know, the employees don't do anything. So there's a pallet car. I end up lying on there, and in the course of me lying there, 3 different people come by. One of them who's an employee there. The employee treats me as though this is nothing that unusual. She's just like, "Hey, you okay? I need to do anything?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine." And she kept on, and then, but in the process of being there, one person came by and said, "You all right?" I said, and this is also because of the cognitive symptoms of the disease: confusion, difficulty retrieving words in the fit of in the midst of an attack. Very hard to like actually string concepts together and speak to another person. But I managed to like just kind of say, "No, I'm okay. I'm having an episode," something like that. This person offered me before they came back a little bit later. They turned around after they'd walked a bit away and said, "I've got what's it called? I've got Narcan in the car." And when I got home, like I had a pretty good sense by the onomatopoeia of the word in the moment. When I got home, I looked it up, and Narcan, he called it Narcan. Narcan is it's a nasal spray that you administer to someone who you think is having an opioid overdose. But you don't know. So it's like, it's safe for someone who's not having one. And that's the whole concept between Narcan. This person saw me in the aisles of the Family Dollar having one of my attacks, which I wasn't even worried about because I've had so many of them. It's just what it is. And looked at me and thought, "Oh, that guy's ODing." So that's
I
what
was
it
going to say
looks
that
like.
I assumed that the employee was so casual about it just because you probably get people who are, overdosing or at least just high, lying around shops.
Yeah. In Detroit,
as an
no Family
employee.
Dollar, absolutely. But yeah, that's what it looks like from the outside, or can look like. Before we move on, I will briefly read. My mother has Sjögren syndrome, and I wanted to read the symptoms of those, and this is just hilarious. This website, themayoclinic.org, lists the two main symptoms.
Classic.
Yes, the two main symptoms of Sjögren syndrome are dry eyes and dry mouth. Okay, and then the extra symptoms that they list are joint pain, swelling, and stiffness, swollen salivary glands, skin rashes or dry skin, vaginal dryness, persistent dry cough, prolonged fatigue. And what they don't list in here that I know are symptoms, by watching Dr. Fucking House, are like difficulty breathing. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous that I pull up this webpage from the Mayo Clinic about Sjögren symptoms, and they say the two main symptoms are dry eyes and dry mouth, and then they go on to list basically fibromyalgia and, your what they're saying there with all of the different symptoms is that your moisture secreting glands in your body stop secreting moisture, and if you can imagine all of the things that fucks up, because your body is attacking your own moisture secreting glands, and how many things in your body require moisture in order to function, including your eyes and your mouth, but your joints and everything. So yeah, but that is around Sjögren syndrome. It has very much the same sort of mystique as chronic fatigue syndrome, which that I prefer to call ME, because chronic fatigue syndrome makes it sound like, oh, so you're tired a lot? Yeah, there's more to it than that, asshole. But it has very much that same condition of, even doctors think of it as, oh, dry eyes and dry mouth. No. That might be like the primary,
isn't it?
Yeah, that's like the big symptom, that if you have that and all these other things, then we should look for Sjögren's, because, moisture secretion is definitely off the scale. But in terms of the most impactful, important symptoms to you as a human being, it's not that my eyes are dry and my mouth. I mean, it has a huge problem. My mother has, she can't fucking swallow the pills that they give to her. I mean, they'll sometimes, the people who are, medical professionals figuring out what to give to my mom because she has Sjögren syndrome will sometimes say, here, take this pill. And it's a horse-sized goddamn capsule. And it's like, do you have any concept of what this disease is? You want me, so my throat is incredibly dry. You want me, she has gone in and they had to stick a camera down her throat, and the camera pulled back a picture of a pill that was stuck to her throat on the inside because her throat wasn't, there wasn't enough saliva to move it down, so it had just sealed onto the side of her throat and was slowly opening up and releasing its shit concentratedly on the side of her esophagus or whatever. Like, and then they're like, "Hey, here, take this pill we got for you." Like,
take this other pill that will hopefully knock that pill off of its pedestal on the way down. Here's a pill for that symptom where you get pills stuck in your throat.
It's basically just we just put an engine in it, just sort of vibrates a little bit. There's a motor in it, just on the way down, shakes out all the other pills you haven't been able to swallow.
Oh man, one of the things that I noticed over Christmas, just jumping back to my dad briefly, I think it's probably the most emotionally impacting on me that has, how I said it hasn't felt real and it doesn't really feel real now even, that he has this condition. But one of the things that makes it feel real is we both do or did karate for a long time since I was very young, and he joined in not long after I started. And as a result, we're doing a lot of exercise and a lot of various muscle related activities, I suppose you could say. And one of them in particular, we found after a while that we're both getting sort of stiff backs, and that there was a particular way that I could hug him from behind and kind of squeeze and roll up. And so just kind of click, 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 click. And it's just, yeah, such relief. And he always found that his back in particular would get really stiff. And so anytime I visit home, it's always, "Oh, Harvey, can you just give me a hug?" And he'll turn around and go like this. And I'll hug him from behind and pull and pull and pull and roll up and click, 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 click. And it's just, such sweet relief. And always then it would be, okay, well, try me and I'll turn around and then he'll hug me from behind and pull. And this time when I went home over Christmas, he just didn't have any of the strength. It was like, it was always used to be such a thing in our relationship, kind of such a weird, but one of those, that no one else is doing this, maybe some families and some relationships have the alternative where they give each other a shoulder massage or whatever, but it's like reliably every single time this is this kind of weird ritual that we do. And he tried to do it, to reciprocate and do it for me, and I kind of like pretended, because I just, you have that instant realization when you're like, oh shit, he's lost all of that strength in his arms and actually physically can't do this anymore. But it was in that moment that I didn't want to kind of point that out or say something like, "Huh, no, you need to do it harder." It's not quite working. Can you pull harder? So I was just like, "Oh, yeah, I think you got it." And just, God, that I keep on thinking back to that. Yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yep. So this Christmas, my mom came to me, which is a bad sign. She's got Sjögren syndrome. She's been dealing with it for longer than I've been dealing with my ME, and between the two of us, I don't want to date her, but the woman in her
No,
60s.
you shouldn't want to date her. She's your mother.
Yeah. What? Oh. Woman in her 60s who has been like, she's on Social Security disability, and has Sjögren syndrome, and she drove to me because I wasn't. You know, that's how bad it was this Christmas season, right around Christmas, the week leading up, the week after, it got really bad. So yeah, she had to come to me, which was great. It was great having her down here. We had a lovely fucking Christmas. And she's, you know, offered to come down like once a month or that kind of a thing, because so she's, you know, she's feeling strong enough and capable enough to come to me once a month to visit and to help me get some things done. And in reverse, I would have to wait for a lucky week in order to even suggest that. And then on the day of, it would have to be a lucky day in the middle of the lucky week. But there have been, I remember a time, Greg, if you're still here, where Greg and I went out to do Christmas shopping. It was actually last year. Yeah, it was around the Christmas season. We went out shopping. And we went to like just a couple of different stores where I knew exactly, like I'd already ordered the thing and it just had to be picked up. And so it was like I wasn't going to have to be on my feet that long. Or go in and maybe we'd walk around a little bit and have some looks and things, but like the moment that I wanted to leave, I should be able to leave. We ended up having to stand in a line for like 15 minutes. It was a relatively short line for Christmas at the micro center around here. Basically, I was on my feet enough that by the time we got back into my car, because I drove, I pulled out onto the road. He started talking in the passenger seat while I was driving, and while we were passing a billboard, just a billboard off to the left side that was coming past, and I glanced up at that billboard while he was talking, while I was supposed to be driving, and my mind started reading those words, and over the course of the next 3 seconds, it became completely evident to me that I should not be driving right now, because I had heard nothing of what he had just said. And when I stopped reading the billboard because it had passed us by and looked back to the road, I felt like I just didn't know what was going on at all. And so we were on the road for about 45 seconds, and I pulled off into a parking lot and said, "Okay, can you drive home?" Which I knew he could, because he drives stick, and thank God, because my car's a stick shift. But, like, that is the level of, you know, when you put out the energy, either you're just having a bad day and it has nothing to do with energy, it's just a bad day, or you tax yourself a little bit more than usual. You know, it's not just these physical symptoms that the Mayo Clinic and everybody else wants to talk about. It is, you know, you don't have the fucking mental energy to focus to know what the fuck is going on. I occasionally like have interactions with people who come to my house, and I'm actually kind of enjoying it, and thinking about replicating it even when I'm not feeling this way, because of the sort of I have control of the conversation when this happens, because I have no control of the conversation. Like somebody addresses me, and then I just sort of like, if you're talking to me and that kind of thing, and I just started doing like, and then I come back to you with sort of a half-broken sentence kind of thing. That is a thing that happens to me when I'm out and about and on my feet, which almost never happens anymore. But, like, the amount of control that I feel over the conversation, somebody comes up to me in Detroit and they're like, "Hey, man, can I have, like, listen, my kid, he's got it, and I gotta get to him. I don't have any gas, and I just need to get the thing, so if you give me a couple of bucks, you know, I can get the bus ride back to," and, like, in that moment, recently I was just having one of those I can't put this all together moments, and so this, like, you know, drug addicted homeless person who's selling me some bullshit story in order to get some change out of me is looking at me, and I'm looking kind of to the side of them and just sort of trying to listen to what they're saying, and then I come back with a half-broken story, and it's like, now I'm in control. Because you don't know, like, I'm supposed to be a little bit afraid of you, homeless, drug-addicted person who wants money from me. But right now, I've made you afraid of me because I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just, good. They've got my receipt, and I'm going to take that in, and they owe me some, because they overcharged me, but when I come back out, maybe, and they're like, okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, I can imagine that they're probably just thinking like, oh, this guy's on drugs too. Oh,
In which case, I wouldn't help you out with any. I need my money.
I was thinking back to something which occurred to me while you were describing when you were at your sister's or half sister's wedding, and everyone kind of standing up. And I was thinking about what are the when do we, if we're at a wedding or a social occasion like that, when do we see someone sitting down or not partaking and make that distinction between, oh, that lazy motherfucker over there not joining in, like, how dare he? And realizing, oh, yeah, it's fine for them not to be doing this. They clearly, got a condition or whatever. And the main thing which occurred to me was just the idea of you should just take a walking stick, maybe. I feel like the distinction most people will make, if you give a fuck about whatever anyone else makes, which I don't think you should do. But like you see someone in a wheelchair not standing up, and it's kind of like, oh, huh. Obviously that guy, we don't
You
expect him to stand
bitch!
up.
Fucking show some respect, you fucking whore!
And so it's just this unfortunate but obvious predicament when not all conditions are visible. There's actually signs around the university campus at Sheffield with something to the effect of, please be patient with other people using the elevators. And the next line is, remember, not all conditions, or I don't think they use the word conditions because it sounds quite clinical, really, but something like not all conditions are visible. And I always see that and I always think, God, yeah. I wonder how many people, like for instance, in your exact situation, have just been treated either like an idiot for looking kind of past you and then coming back with half a sentence, or been treated like like they have mental difficulties in other aspects.
Yeah, actually, I've thought about that in terms of like if I were to go to a baseball game, if I were to go down to, well, it's not Tigers Stadium anyway, it's Comerica Stadium. If I were to go to a sporting event of any kind and, like have the energy and like, I'm going to go to the sporting, I've been invited. All right, what the fuck? I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw myself in. And then just comes time for the national anthem and everybody stands up and, the question would be whether or not people would look at me sitting down and think that, I might have a condition, or they look at me sitting down and think, oh, he doesn't really have a lot of respect for America. In either case, that's true. So, it works out fine for me in that situation, is what I've realized. That actually, that's fine, Just imagine, though, but it is like a beautiful out in that situation. Guy like taps on your shoulder like, hey, asshole, fucking national anthem, stand up. And then I can basically just go, fuck you, and stay seated. And then if he starts something, then I can always pull out I have a chronic disease, motherfucker. It's like, I don't have to explain that also.
The Uno reverse
I don't
card.
feel any amount of patriotism for the bullshit that goes on in this country. So, like, I can just go straight to chronic disease. It's great.
Uno reverse. Now you're the asshole. So, oh shit. Or as Matty Hayes says, yeah, or you could just hit him with your cane, which you'll, by my advice, apparently you would have.
Yeah, I like that. I should get myself, it's one that's like a particular, like modeled after House's cane, with the fucking flames on the bottom of it and everything. That'd be perfect. Be perfect. Then
Or
people
one which
would know
contains
he's
a
a dick
sword.
and he's in pain.
As Gottschalk has pointed out, one which contains a sword would be pretty good.
Shing!
Or a gun.
What, motherfucker?
Can you imagine? This is another one for the list of situations that ought to come out of a horror film. The guy's got this cane and it looks almost threatening, but in reality he's just leaning on it because he's having an attack. God.
Oh god, yeah, I like that. That's an idea for us. Yeah, I mean, if you could pack the context into that, some fucking ninja fight or something about to go off, and they just like swing the camera around to a guy who's just like really leaned on the cane, but because of the lighting and the silhouetting and everything, it looks like fucking oh shit's about to break off, and then he just looks up and he's like.
Struggling to
Just kind of
think,
like,
yeah.
just sort of half falls to the left until he's off screen. Stumbling.
I feel like with some amazing
Go on
art
without
direction, you could make something really powerful there, where it's like the silhouettes of all these events, where it just looks so incredibly threatening, and then there's with one character going around seeing all these threatening looking scenarios and becoming increasingly afraid and paranoid, and then after that character leaves whatever scene is going on, immediately afterwards it's like the lighting shifts and it's just a guy leaning on his cane, or it's just porn sitting in a closet facing the other way.
um okay, since we are getting to the end of the hour and the end of the show here, I would like to wrap up on the perfect example of the symptoms of ME, which is that I had something that I wanted to wrap up on, and I wanted to wrap up on the. No, it's not that. Fuck yeah! I mean, basically, this is it. This is what we're talking about.
This is a good way to end, though. This is actually quite apt. Perfect.
I swear it had something to do with like the lack of access to care at the, so I wanted to wrap up on so my mother wants me to seek out a doctor to get a diagnosis, which is very difficult, but she's like been putting in the effort to try and find a doctor or find some place that I could go to get a diagnosis. And the purpose of getting the diagnosis isn't really to help treat my symptoms, because there's really no treatment. They'll give you antidepressants and they might give you painkillers. I've got a painkiller. And I've got other painkillers in reserve. So I've handled that at least to this point. It will only get worse, presumably, but as long as I can go on without having to I don't think that opioids are better than this, basically. It's my personal opinion. But if you can get away with it, if you don't have pain that requires more than this, and so far I can manage with just enough of this, so I'm sticking with this until it's necessary. But she wants to get me a diagnosis because sooner or later it's going to be, it's already difficult for me to work. So here's the thing that we need to talk about before the end of this Harv and Pawn.
Yeah, I was going to point out, yeah.
We're going to do the episodes from now on every other week. And that has a lot to do with me just feeling like I can't commit to doing the episodes, and I would just, there's a lot of work that goes into these shows, usually, not today. Usually, there's a lot of, we're prepping, we're trying to create new segments between each show and bring them out and stuff like that, and our schedule of production has been harried, and I don't feel, especially after what happened, over Christmas, that I can keep up with that, and I don't want to be the guy who keeps saying, oh, I couldn't do it this week, and so everything gets pushed back, So we're going to do these shows once every other week, but what we're replacing them with is we're going to start a podcast. We're going to start a podcast together where it's none of this, it's none of the show, it's none of the webcam, it's something we record, not live, and we just, do our thing and we chat about how Aquaman is inferior to Detective Pikachu or whatever it is that's on our mind for the week.
I also, also just putting in quickly, I want to point out that it's not just you who is pining for a reduction in the workload of making this show. I've also got my full-time job that I'm working on, and to be honest, as we discussed quite in depth in the 2019 post-mortem episode just before Christmas, the best thing about this show for the two of us, really high on the list, is the comedy segments that we make. And a lot of the show is not those comedy segments. And while, having this kind of live discussion thing is really cool and it's nice to be able for us to do, and I hope you guys are enjoying it, I don't feel like there's much loss and there's a lot to gain by cutting the frequency of the live show and all the production and the post-production that comes with it, cutting that in half, essentially, and being able to, A, experiment with some other formats, i.e. this podcast, which, as we were talking about, gives a really different vibe. I feel like it makes for much more intimate kind of conversations where we can really focus on what we're saying and not care too much about the visuals or the live audience. But also means that when we do the live show, our comedy skit production schedule actually has a chance in hell of keeping up with the frequency of the shows. So we'll make fewer episodes of the show, but each one hopefully will have a comedy skit. So that's the plan there. And yeah, so the podcast will be going up. Haven't figured out any of the logistics for that. I'm going to be doing that this weekend.
Because we
And
only had
so-
21 days.
Yeah,
We needed a
we only had
fucking
21
break,
days.
man.
Oh yeah, and it's worth pointing out as well that you started off the episode of this, this episode by saying, "Oh, I just had a really bad kind of ME bits over Christmas, and we did this whole year's worth of preparation for the first season, and then now with this, the second season's had no preparation, and I'm just over here like, yeah, I was fine over Christmas. I was just lazy. I just didn't do anything. I just didn't do any work.
It's been a great,
but that's fine.
There has been an upside. Like when CFS symptoms first started coming out, I first realized what it was and that kind of stuff. I was not. I made some comments publicly about how this could actually work out pretty good for me, because anytime I want to be lazy, I can just say, "Oh, I'm having a bad. Oh,
I would go to the social event you've invited me to, but it's flaring right now. And yeah.
But to finish my thought, so my mom wants me to get a diagnosis, and the reason that she wants me to get a diagnosis, which is incredibly difficult to get because this symptom, the condition that I have, ME, is a diagnosis of exclusion. It is, you rule out every other thing that it could be, and then you can finally say, okay, it's probably ME. Which is bullshit, because there are actual tests that labs have created in the past 2 or 3 years, but medical science doesn't catch up to the labs ever. But the point is, she wants me to get a diagnosis so that I can apply for Social Security disability, because the longer time goes on, the harder it is for me to do whatever work it is that I'm doing. And for the past, I think it's like 6 years now, it's been being a YouTuber and a live streamer and that sort of a thing, which is, about as perfect as it could be for being someone who has to sit in a chair, who can't be on their feet and can't put out that much, physical energy. But, it also has left me in a situation where, like, we were talking, Harv and I were talking finance and money and things a little bit, like yesterday or the day before, whenever it was that we chatted. And, I went through my finances and went, yeah, it looks like I'm going to be, making, oh, jeez, this is $650 this month? Oh, cool. That's pretty much what I need.
That was like above your average as well. I think you were estimating around $400 or so.
Yeah, so like it was at $650. I'm like, okay, that's the income to deal with the outgo, because I have designed my fucking existence around this disease. I have been carefully crafting it. I bought this house for $2,500 so that I wouldn't be paying rent, and everything that I've done has put me in a position where I have the lowest income, because I can't get access to the aid that we supposedly have in America for, people who are disabled and shit. And I know we're trying to wrap up here, but on this note, like, I can't get Social Security disability until I have a diagnosis. And then once I start the process, it will take, on average, 2 years from the moment that I start it to the moment that it completes. I will be denied summarily in the first instance. That's just part of what the court does. It immediately throws you out, and then you have to, like, reapply, or you have to, whatever it is they call it. But basically, you have to hire an attorney in order to make this process happen. The attorney will charge you 25% of whatever you collect at the end, because they will pay you back pay from the day that you filed, which means you're giving up a quarter of the income that you were supposed to have in the time that you needed to live. Well, you have a disease that means you can't bring in any income, and your attorney representation, your legal representation, has an incentive to draw it out, because the longer they go, the bigger their 25% cut is. The entire fucking system is upside down and backwards. And as a final note, my mother, takes prescription medication that the federal government of America keeps trying to crack down on because it keeps ending up on the streets. And so it's a street drug now. And she, along with millions of American citizens, require this just to function in a fucking day. And she can't get a hold of it because they keep making it as illegal as they possibly can. And prescription pharmacies, they don't even want to fill it anymore. We don't want to order that. And shit like that. Painkiller medication for people who are in chronic fucking pain, and it's not going to get any better. She can't get a hold of it, and that's the situation in America. Nobody in this fucking country gives a shit that is in a position of power. And every time that you hear them talk about cracking down on drug traffic and shit like that, know that what they're really talking about is cracking down on people who are in a position where they cannot live their lives without prescription medication, in an attempt to prevent people who have the option of whether or not they want to get high this evening, so that they can't get high this evening. Is my angry summation to the episode.
And I'll tack on one extra thought just to round that off nicely as well, is that by attempting to crack down on these drugs...
nicely?
Yeah, I'll round that off nicely.
Okay.
In this attempt to crack down on these street drugs, not only are they mostly just preventing, by the sounds of it, the people who are using it to legitimately treat their, chronic illnesses, but also it's been pretty well shown and evidenced. It's been happening for long enough now that the whole war on drugs thing has had the complete opposite of effect of what anyone hoped it would have had. It's increased drug use, or illegal drug use, in America, and it doesn't help people get off of drugs. It just kind of demonizes and has no measurable positive impact on the situations it's designed to try and reduce. So there you go. It's not just the legitimate people; it's also the illegitimate users who are getting it worse, and not in the reduction of the amount of drug they use.
Yeah, and some of the people who had prescription medication that has been made so difficult for them to get, and their doctors don't want to write it, and the prescription, places don't want to fill it, are literally doing heroin now. Like, I have friends of friends. I have just, connections through my father, stories about people fucking killing themselves because they were on prescription medication. The government changed regulations. Their doctors cut them off. They couldn't get it anymore. And you've got stories of OD, or in the instance of the individual that my father used to be friends with in high school, got to a point where, the pain was too much and couldn't do anything for it and just fucking ended it. And that's the effect of the American political system. So thanks for coming on, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching the Harv and Porn Show. We're here to make you feel good. But yeah, no, genuinely, thank you for watching. Been a bit of a tough episode. Maybe we'll choose a discussion topic in 2 weeks' time. That's a bit on the lighter side. If you want to contribute to those ideas, you can just shoot us a message, or preferably email us directly at harvandporn@gmail.com.
Hey,
you can email in suggestions for discussion topics. This isn't actually something that we've talked about, but I think we could push for this because we're stuck for content. So
and we need actually I can't think of off the top of your head. Can you think of how people would because we're going to do the podcast, but the podcast isn't going to be like a live Twitch broadcast or anything like that, and that would be coming out the first one next week. So how do they find that? Are we going to release it as a YouTube video as well?
It's definitely going to go up on YouTube as well, but I think the idea will be to try and get it on the Apple iTunes podcast store, whatever that is, and the Google Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts thing, which is the one I
Okay.
use.
So yeah, make sure you're subscribed to youtube.com/harvandpawn in order to,
No.
No?
It's not youtube.com/harvandpawn.
Oh, right.
We don't have that URL yet. We need 100 subscribers, so please subscribe. And you can
Harv.
find the channel at harv.and.roninporn.com.
That's right. There it is. That should take you to that channel because we don't have a vanity plate for it.
Yep. You can probably
this is
just
our
find it by
lives,
searching Harv and
everybody.
Porn.
And I would complain about that, but it just doesn't compete with the American federal government.
It's small fry
Health
compared to the
system.
injustice of the American healthcare system. Yeah.
Fucking YouTube, and I can't get a vanity plate from relatively speaking, yeah, fuck.
I want to let everyone know that before we started streaming today, Porn was abusing a customer help service guy who was just trying to help.
This is my want.
With the restreaming of the streams of the various different locations that we're live right now.
By leaning on his ass the entire time with like 3 minutes to air, we got the situation resolved. And if I hadn't leaned, it would have been done 7 minutes after we started broadcast. It wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I kicked the shit out of an individual, and that's why you were able to watch this on youtube.com/HOC Gaming today.
Please support us, and we'll do it to more people. Yeah. But yes, thanks for watching, and we shall see you here in 2 weeks' time on my birthday, I believe. Yeah, in 2 weeks' time, 22nd of January, my birthday, and I'll be 22 years old. Is it going to be episode 22? That would be amazing if it was also episode 22.
If we,
We'll have to see.
manipulate the numbers enough, we can do just about
Oh yeah,
anything,
we
can't
could begin the indexing from actually from 0, and it would probably end up being, or actually from 1, and it'll probably be about there. So yes, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Harv, Porn, Harv, Porn, Harv and Porn, and 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 Harv and Porn. Harv and Porn.